The hardest part is starting. This is the beginning to a motivational speech I once heard years ago. It rang true when I was mulling over which project to make every day in absence of any friends or anything else to pay mind to, and by which project I mean slamming my head against the wall in desperation for an idea to appear in it, and it rings true now as I am more uninspired, bereft of creativity, and absent of any mind whatsoever. To the point of blankness on the level of a white wall chroma keyed onto an empty warehouse painted green. What is it about the color white that's more blank than uniform green in an empty space? I'm not sure. Take it up with culture. Advocates for a schedule would, at this point, exclaim zealously and without impunity that I have a sleeping problem. I neither wake up nor sleep at the same time each day, and this has been a relative consistency throughout my entire life, to the point where it's both disturbed parents and pets for me of yesterday, and in the bed of lovers for the me of today. To cap that off, it's exceptionally common that I sleep in bursts rather than full cycles, a few hours here and a few hours there with a strict inclination towards the nocturnal. This can be attributed to, like most things in human behavior, genetic and environmental factors. My father has never been able to hold the same job. The longest one he had ever held was for more than a year, and that was quite recent. In order to sleep on the same track, he employed various psychoactive substances to either stay awake or fall asleep, depending on what the situation required. And while discipline can mitigate one's genetic predilections to some extent, I had none. Growing up homeschooled, the flexibility of my sleep schedule was far and wide, with the one caveat being that I generally trended towards the daytime. Although, even that had exceptions. See my wild forays into nighttime homeschooling that occurred primarily a few times when I was a child, and became the predominant mode of my quote-unquote education in my early teens. Did I mention that despite being homeschooled, I had the same break schedule of my publicized peers? With parents that didn't enforce a bedtime, you can guess what edge of the clock I leaned on during those periods. Upon being cast off to the whims of the public education system when I was 12 or so, with all the unbending entrapment of prison, immediately my sentencing was marred by an incapability to adapt to its resounding rigidity. I awoke in an irrepressible haze of angst at the air now quickly entering my lungs, and half-lit eyelids that looked as inoperable as they functioned. Man does not delight me, nor woman neither, but by your smiling you seem to say so. That part was a reference to Hamlet. It's about depression. I have depression. Having only a few hours of sleep meant either working on a few hours of sleep or sleeping instead of working. In the event that I worked, it was unlikely that I'd come to sleep because my precious time would not be spent exclusively on things I vehemently detested. Can you guess how many vent posts I made on my microblog Facebook, and how many used the word disdain? Days awake, a pattern. Now then, if I were to sleep in the class, that would necessarily mean that I no longer needed to sleep at night, or at least it was something. Fast forward to just before 8th grade, and I was a problem child. My fighting at school led to, after a round of shouting matches, me being homeschooled again. Only 2 years and a quarter imprisoned. My parents, with their subsequent on-and-off relationship status, in tandem with my mother's general ineptitude with electronic devices, did not surveil my progress. As such, I stayed up at night and made/watched content for/on the internet, and the few times my sleep schedule was questioned, it could easily be justified by saying that our data allowance with HughesNet, satellite internet, was higher at nighttime, so I had to do it. You know, to save data for everyone else. This was the evolution of where I am now. I had a few months into 9th grade with many absences, a visit to truancy court before dropping out for the rest of my life, and you can imagine what my sleep was like during those few months leading up to December when we said fuck it again. Pro strat, keep your monitor swiveling and under a blanket next to your bed to watch anime whilst listening for footsteps, so you know when to hide underneath the covers again with the monitor off. I valued my free time. So here I am about to turn 20 with a long track record of weird sleep, With schedules out the window, my pathway to consistency has been to do things regardless of them. Whatever will bemark today. That's my starting point, my guiding hand and benevolent master, beckoning me as I write in pursuit of some idea of productivity that fits snugly within the bounds of quote-unquote every day. I suppose this isn't so different than when I was writing blog posts in 2016 about how I needed to do things, and the post itself was an example of me doing a thing whilst breaking down the way in which I do things. The more things change, the more they stay the same, eh?